Hiya crafters, Amy here, and today I'm going to make a new home card with a shaker element. So let's jump right in. Now to start, I have this awesome shapes die. This was actually a freebie on my recent scrapbook order. I have some pattern paper and some adorable sparkle blends from Doodles Paper Playground. So I'm going to make a low profile shaker card, meaning it's not going to stick off too far off the card and hopefully won't require much in terms of extra postage or any at all. So the secret here is this adhesive backed foam that I'm going to use instead of foam tape. I have an A2 size card base of 110-pound cardstock and these gorgeous stitched frame dies from LDRS Creative. I have a couple embossing folders, which I will just use one, but here's a photo of the finished card. I'm really pleased with how it came together. I'm excited that I was able to use some pattern paper and obviously this new die that I'm super excited about. So I'm just looking here, figuring out which one of these embossing folders I want to use. I do end up going with the angled mosaic. So I just spritz the back of this white cardstock and run it through off screen through my embossing folder, and I did already cut that panel down with that stitched die from LDRS. Now here you can see the front die actually cuts out the frame shape, and then the larger, thinner die actually cuts out the background. So I'm going to use that frame to my advantage and actually use that die cutting out of the adhesive backed foam to create the height that you would normally get from foam tape. So not only do I have to worry about messy foam tape showing from the side, but I'm also able to make the shaker card actually a little bit lower profile than I normally would, because this adhesive back foam isn't quite as thick as most foam tape. Now here I'm using the backer piece to cut out some acetate. This is for the front part of the shaker. And then I'll be able to use a white piece of cardstock to create that white frame to go on top of that foam. So again, I used the bigger backer piece to cut out the pattern paper that will show in the back of the shaker, and then also that piece to cut out the acetate because I want it to cover the entire front. Then I use the frame to cut out of white for the very top piece, and then out of the adhesive back foam to create the well basically to hold the little shaker bits. So I hope that makes sense as you're watching this. Now I will basically attach that acetate directly to that white frame that will go on top. So on the back of the white frame, I have liquid glue, and I'm just using that just because it's quick and easy to kind of attach the acetate to the paper this way. But you could absolutely use that little bit of foam tape or tear tape that I have on screen there. You can use that as well, but I just thought in this case it's quicker, easy to line it up, and then it's perfect. You don't have to worry about trying to cut off the extra acetate. It's the same exact size as the backer. Now here you'll see that the one caveat of using this method is that the die cutting of this adhesive back foam will kind of squish it down a little bit, and it can warp it. So be careful when you're doing this bit not to stretch the foam out too much, because you want it to maintain that exact same shape as the pattern paper backer. And you will see that it does kind of stick out a little bit in my finished design, but I don't really mind, and that's kind of why I picked a color that I feel matches with the design, because I don't really mind that it shows. So this is just the one teeny tiny not deal breaker drawback in my mind to doing it this way, just because I don't want to mess with having to do foam tape all the way around that perimeter. I like the nice, clean, even dimension all the way around without showing any little, bits of foam tape on the side. So this is a fun way to kind of create a shaker with nice clean lines and also to make it pretty low profile. Now you can see this is not sticking up very high at all. So I was a little nervous that the little goody shaker bits wouldn't have enough room to move around in there. But in the end, it ended up just fine. They were able to move around and I was able to keep the card from being too bulky. Now this is a Be Mine, I think it's what it's called. I will link it below, but this is a really cool woman-owned business called Doodles Paper Playground, and she makes all these gorgeous shaker blends which are great for shaker cards and also for embellishments on the front of a card. But basically, I was just picking out, there's little conversation hearts because I think it's actually a Valentine's Day themed, but I just really like the colors. So I picked out the little clay bits of conversation hearts and then just left some of the sequins from the mix that I wanted to kind of go with my design. And then I'm using that very thin 1/8 inch, I believe it's 1/8 inch foam tape, or not foam tape, tear tape, and I went around the perimeter of the acetate, and now basically all I have to do is just remove the backer and line that up, and that finishes the shaker. So you could turn this into a tag on its own. You could turn it into a cute ornament, like maybe a new home with the year that they moved into their new home. And then they could make it a little ornament for their tree with some cute ribbon. Or in this case, obviously, I'm going to attach it to a card and turn it into like a congratulations card for a new home. So I have this piece of scrap cardstock here, and I'm just stamping with some Distress Oxide because, as you know, they stamp really well. The Distress inks don't stamp so well, but the oxides, because they're a hybrid and they're partially pigment, stamp beautifully. So I'm using 1 sentiment to use ultimately for the front of the card, and then one I have loaded up in my mini Misty, or my regular size Misty here, and I'm just going to stamp another sentiment with that same color on the inside of this card base. So these colors I felt went really well. It says wishing you every happiness, and then the front says congratulations on your new home. So I have Milled Lavender and Dusty Concord are the Distress Oxide colors that I'm using, and I felt like this embossed panel needed a little something else, so I'm just coming in with a blending foam here and laying down these two colors all around this panel just to kind of give it some interest and help it stand off that white background. And I really wanted the white house frame to just really pop off the card. And it wasn't quite enough, so I came back in with a Dusty Concord in these two corners, and then just very light-handed just to really pick up on the design of that embossing. And then I'm coming in again with some more tear tape. I think this is 1/4 inch, but honestly, use whatever you have, liquid glue, anything like that. And I'm just going to remove the backer and put this directly onto the card. It's basically just assembling at this point. I was trying to decide if I wanted the sentiment on the bottom or on the top. And I did carry some more of that green adhesive back foam onto the back of that banner. So that way it has kind of, you know, even dimension on both the top and the bottom of the card. And then I'm just going to take a smattering of this same blend just in some of the colors and put some of those around the front of the card with some liquid glue just to kind of give it a little something extra and kind of carry those colors more around the card. So once I liquid glue these down, I'm going to show you the finished card here. So you can see they move around fine. The little shaker bits don't get stuck. It's got nice even dimension around the frame of that shaker. Another option, if you don't like the way the foam kind of smushes out the side, you can die cut it and then maybe let it sit a little bit. And I think it does kind of go back to its normal height and dimension. But like I said, I just picked a color that I knew went with the design, and I kind of like it. It helps it pop off the card. So I hope you enjoyed this idea to make a low profile shaker. If you did, please hit the thumbs up and consider subscribing, and I'll check you next time. Bye.